A very good morning from the KTN News Center here in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Many thanks for joining us. This is Sunday edition here on KTN News. If you're just joining us, this is what we do every Sunday morning from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. We dissect the biggest political and governance stories in the Republic. On the broadcast this morning, we have a lot to discuss in the next 120 minutes or so. We'll take a look at the report by the Joint Parliamentary Committee that was probing the sugar crisis, a report that has continued to elicit outrage, first from the floor of the House itself, many describing the report as shoddy and inconclusive. We'll talk about that. The two committees, Agriculture and Trade, been given another 10 days to table a more conclusive report. We'll take a look at that. Also, we'll have a look at the war on corruption. What is being done differently? Is Kenya really winning this war on graft? We are seeing, or Kenyans are seeing, much more arrests these days. Just this last week, the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, ordering the arrest of the Busia Governor, Sospita Ojamong, over graft claims. Also the managers of the Patel Dam in the county of Nakuru, alongside many others, over that Solai Dam tragedy. So we'll discuss about that. What is happening? Is the judiciary also slowing down the war on corruption, as has been claimed by the DPP? Stand by for that discussion. And finally, we take a look at some politics. Jubilee, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. The talks of cracks in the ruling party, despite the party hierarchy denying this. We have seen these things persist. There was that botched parliamentary group meeting last week. There are reports that Jubilee MPs have been gagged over talk of 2022 politics. Is that true? We'll talk about all that. Thanks for joining me on the broadcast this morning. Let me introduce my guests on the panel this morning. I have with me lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori, as always, here with me. I have with me Hesbon Owila, political analyst and a communication expert. And we have a new panelist, a new lady here on the show, Lillian Richards-Okech, the president of the Kenya Women's in the USA. Of course, she'll be joining us this morning. Karibu, Lillian. Mark Bichachi is not with us today. Will be with us next Sunday. But Dismas Mokwa is here with us, political risk analyst. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for joining me this morning. First, let's begin with what's happening in the newspapers this morning. Sunday Standard, and the splash is a story on the standard gauge railway. A bit of a shock, really. The headline is shock over 1 billion shilling a month SGR bill. So a lot of issues have been outlined here. Apparently, Kenyans are paying 1 million shillings every month to run the standard gauge railway. There was 3.5 billion amount that was paid in advance to this China Road and Bridge Corporation before the start of operations. This was for mobilization procurement of initial operation. And we have heard of the report. The Standard is reporting on allegations of discrimination by Kenyans working at the SGR by the Chinese. They're calling it neo-colonialism and outright discrimination and racism. A lot of things, claims, leaving a sour taste in the mouth. Dismas, what do you think about this?
I had the opportunity of attending Strathmore, where I did accounting And when you look at these numbers, they do not make sense at all.
Right.
These numbers would not make sense to an accountant. They wouldn't make sense to an economist. They wouldn't make sense to a journalist. They would not make sense to Mama Mboga in Mosoche in Kisii. They don't make sense to anybody. So in other words, this is a scandal. There's no way you're going to be having revenues of 1 billion per year, and you are using 1 billion per month.
That's 30 million every single day.
Yeah, this is a logic which is upside down. And you recall when this project was coming up, and in this show we've had debates times above number, saying that this is a procurement-driven decision-making process. Right. This one is just a scam, and I'm hoping that when Haji is done with his current file, he's going to zoom in. But now getting outside the numbers, when you go to the story itself, it's unacceptable that Kenyans are being treated as if they're in apartheid South Africa. I've seen photos of Kenyan men and women lying prostrate on the ground. They're being punished. How can that happen in modern Kenya today? I mean, I'd like you to have that mental picture, that a Kenyan man above 18 years, most of them have got bachelor's degree diplomas, employed by this organization, are lying prostrate, that they're being punished. And then you've got a fellow from China who decides to use the track line as a toilet. That Kenyan men and women cannot share facilities. Kenyan men and women who work at this railway line cannot share facilities with their Chinese counterparts. This is a disaster. And for me, I'm just wondering, I don't know, you know now, I got an A in English, but I don't have good words to describe this situation. I'm just trying to imagine that you've got a Chinese man who uses the railway line as a bathroom. That if a Kenyan makes a mistake, a man with a family, with children, with grandchildren, you are told to lie down prostrate as a punishment. So have you been found guilty? You know, even in the Chinese society, when you go through a legal process, you're found guilty, then you are given a beating. But here you have, this is a disaster, and there are no words to describe this.
This must almost being getting speechless here. That's a first, but it seems to show the gravity of the issue. Lillian, this is Uhuru Kenyatta's pet project. What is your take on the report of what's happening here?
I'm shocked because naturally you'd expect this is going to be one of the things we're proud about as Kenyans.
Right.
But now it's turning out to be abusive to Kenyans and misappropriation of taxpayers' money. And what he just said, it doesn't make sense to me either. Yeah, and this stuff about neocolonialism is a shocking thing to me. I never really, I haven't read this, you know.
Right.
So, yeah.
Husband, do these numbers make sense for you?
Well, just like Dismas says, I mean, this is shocking.
Or should we wait?
Yeah, you can actually just look at the bigger picture, even if you give it many years to come. I think from the beginning of it all, you realize that these numbers don't make sense, and it doesn't really add up as far as the return for investment is concerned. And then you add onto that, you know, the elements of, you know, indiscriminate treatment of both Kenyans and the Chinese, and issues of labor where Kenyans are relieved of their jobs, and then we have Chinese coming to do things that Kenyans can easily do.
Yes.
I think that raises a lot of concern, and it is not just about the Kenyan government. I mean, there is a lot that the Chinese government needs to address here. I think China has this road and bridge initiative, and if this is what it is coming out to be, I don't think it's good for them. But then secondly, I think we also need to be very fair on President Uhuru Kenyatta. I use the train almost every weekday, and it's the SGR train from Syokimau, Imara to town. And I know the first time it was introduced, it was quite expensive, fairly expensive, and most of the locals could not actually afford it. And the fact that the cost went down, and it is now probably the main means of transport for the people from that neighborhood, means that there is a lot that the government is doing in terms of incentivizing. You know, they've brought the cost down to benefit the common mwananchi. So they just need to balance the public interest bit of it, because to a large extent, the commuter train is subsidized and the government is paying for that cost. And I think it's just a question of looking at the numbers, the investment that we put in and the amount of money that you're paying, and taking care of the common mwananchi who is benefiting from the train.
All right. Kipchumba.
Thank you, Ben. I think we go back to the same adage that no matter how sweet food is or how good food is, when it is served with poison, it serves no purpose. For us to sit here and even interrogate that a Chinese is punishing people with a cane is in itself mysterious. I think we need to welcome the Chinese and to acquaint them with the Kenyan laws. And first and foremost, Article 28 of the Constitution on human dignity. Everybody has an inherent human dignity, not given by the state, but given by birth. When you are born breathing, you have that dignity, and it must be respected. Secondly, we must not allow Chinese to operate in this country as if they're operating in we are a pariah state. Kenya has a set of rules. Why are we allowing Chinese to come to Kenya and start pruning flowers? And every morning we shout about unemployment. Why are we allowing trained locomotive drivers to sit there and collect rubbish? Mm-hmm. Is that the view the Chinese have about us whenever they are? What is this so serious they are eating that they cannot allow Kenyans to sit in the same table? I think after the break of this story, we need to see the person in charge of this thing resigning and going home. Because wherever the founding fathers of this country are in their graves, they are turning. And they are not turning because of happiness, but they are in shock and awe. Because you cannot allow a country to be run this way, where you bring Chinese, they come there, they prune flowers, they kill animals with no respect, they disrespect human dignity, they go to an extent of this. What they are doing is what we call in labor laws exploitative ways of employment. How can you have people doing the same job but earning a different salary? I thought the law was to the extent that if we are doing the same job with the same qualification, we earn the same salary. Another thing which we need to be told by the requisite authorities, what are the qualifications of these Chinese? Not just their color and pedigree, but we need to see their academic credentials so that as they work here, they are not coming to a free country. Secondly, we have regulations on people coming to Kenya who are coming to do, they must come to do something which ordinarily is not around. But if you are coming to prune flowers, right, what does that say? And finally, as I finish, why do we build a rail line which was very good in the beginning? I have used it twice going to Mombasa. It is efficient to that end. But as it is efficient, let it also be furthering the principles captured in Article 10 of our Constitution, our national values. Right. We cannot have people, because of their color, using the truck as a toilet. We cannot allow, and we should not allow.
Great, great. That story is the splash on the Sunday Standard this morning. You can check it out in more detail on pages 4 and 5. Pain on the trucks, just the numbers being crunched there and the claims being made by several insiders who have been spoken to by the Standard. On the Sunday Nation, the headline, House divided, Jubilee is no longer at ease. We did discuss this last week, the simmering tensions in the ruling party. There was a press conference by the party Secretary General Raphael Tuju, who denied any cracks within the party. But this talk is not going anywhere anytime soon. There was a planned parliamentary group meeting on Tuesday. It was cancelled in the last minute. We were told there was no PG meeting at all, and media was just creating all this. We'll have this much. We'll talk about this in more detail later on, but what do you think is happening here?
Well, in as much as Raphael Tuju will say there's no crisis within Jubilee, there's a crisis. And this crisis has been occasioned by two things, which, as we indicated, are mutually exclusive. There's President Kenyatta and his Big Four agenda. He wants to be sure that he delivers on his manifesto or the Big Four agenda for the next 4 years to solidify his leadership. Because when you look back, if you discuss President Kibaki, we all remember him on infrastructure. And for President Kenyatta, there's a risk that if he doesn't implement the Jubilee manifesto and the Big Four agenda extracted from the manifesto, people may easily remember him as presiding over a country with a lot of allegations around corruption. So that's now President Kenyatta. Then on the other hand, you have the Deputy President, who is very keen on 2022. He says he's not doing any campaigns. Like yesterday when he was in the coast, he said is merely doing his job as the president's principal assistant. But that would only make sense to a person who is very naive, who doesn't understand how politics in Kenya is done. Is focusing on the succession politics. Now, the two are mutually exclusive.
So many people ask you, what should he do? Should he just sit in his office all day?
You know, if you want to be a successful deputy president or a deputy governor, when you wake up early in the morning, you go to your boss's office and ask him, "Good morning, sir. Please give me instructions for the day." And the president or the governor will give you instructions. If you look at all successful deputy governors in Kenya, that the ones who are seated pretty, they're taking prayers in their bedrooms, hoping that something is going to happen to the governor so that they take over. That's their prayer, because, you know, they're really not friends. So people need to go and look for retired President Moi and ask him, how did he survive as a vice president all that long? Or even go to Kalonzo Musyoka, ask him, how did he survive as President Kibaki's deputy? When you are the deputy president, number one, you are not supposed to outshine your boss. Number two, you are not supposed to make your boss nervous. Number three, you're supposed to sit pretty and just wait for instructions. But right now, the deputy president has got a very strong persona, he's got a very strong character, he's got the gift of the gab, he's got a countrywide network, and as far as he's concerned, he must go with the trophy 2022. It doesn't matter what people are going to say. If you listen carefully to the clip, from what he said in Mombasa, he said, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, I've got a constitutional obligation to be the President's principal assistant. It's as if he was telling people, if you don't like what I'm doing, go drop in a river. But you see, you cannot afford to make your boss nervous. The moment you do that, then we may find ourselves in the Nigerian situation whereby Atiku Abubakar all of a sudden decided to make Obasanjo nervous. And Obasanjo said that, rain or shine, this guy is not going to take over from me. And as we speak right now, Atiku Abubakar is probably regretting somewhere.
Right. Lillian, what do you think about the so-called splits in the Jubilee Party? What do you think is happening there?
So, Ben, I really stay out of the politics. I don't follow that. Yes, so I reserve my comments.
You don't want to talk about politics, but Kenya is a political country.
It's true. I mean, as long as there's peace, I'm happy. So, yeah, I think I'll pass that.
You're right. Hezbon?
Well, I think it's now a bit clear that, there's a lot of politics in Jubilee. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong in that, because this is a fairly democratic political party, and it seems like they accommodate divergent voices.
All right.
I would also want to imagine that there are things that Jubilee, or a few people in Jubilee, expect the deputy president to do, and he's not that. You cannot become that which you are not,
Yes.
And I don't think he's going to become, that kind of deputy who wakes up in the morning and says, hello, boss, what do you have for me? It won't work for him. And if he tries being that kind of a very loyal deputy, again, it would work against him, because it's not his character. He may not thrive in that. It's like your enemy is telling you to go to their level where they are good at playing, and then they finish you. The best thing you can do, just remain at your level. Let your enemy remain at a lower level where they are good at, remain at an upper level. But I think, having said that, it's also quite clear, that whatever we've always thought, that there is that thin line between the URP wing and the TNA wing of Jubilee.
Right.
And I think the divisions are becoming a lot clear along that line. But for a neutral like me, I think that is the best way to go in a political party, that people need to flex their muscles so that they earn respect.
All right.
The few people who think that there are pushovers in the party are now getting to realize that when the deputy president continues doing whatever he's doing, even when people are making noise, it is because he knows his worth, he knows his stature, and he knows what he's all about.
All right.
Yes.
Kipchumba, do you think if this continues, does it threaten government operations in any way? I mean, this is the ruling party.
Ben, any noise, any time, threatens survival of peace. When there is too much noise, you are not sure if you can even hear this man talking from the other end. But that does not mean that there is something wrong happening. It might be only grumbling inside there. But the most important point that must also be brought out is this one: when you bring 13 political parties together, it does not mean that you are just bringing people of the same minds. And the same reason why a political party exists, it is an arena of discourse. It exists to showcase different ideologies. The unfortunate thing about our nation is that our political parties exist to showcase different tribal traditions, which it ought to be different political philosophies. Coming to the recent development in Jubilee, I think you must be an ivory tower dweller if you still buy the line that there are no problems in Jubilee. When we are seeing hashtags being churned out each day, there is hashtag Team Tanga Tanga, there is the Kieleweke, it means there is a problem somewhere. And to the extent that there are people sponsoring these things to be. Because we have seen for the last 1 week, I've seen all manner of caricatures mimicking certain leaders from a certain region, which means there are people seated somewhere trying very hard to make sure that the deputy president does not work with the Mount Kenya leadership. And you can see in today in your page, I think page 4, there is a story to that effect. And I think most of these people are not good students of history. It took this country a lot of effort, energy, to bring together the two communities, the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin communities. And most people do not appreciate that. I wish they could appreciate that so that any political machinations happens above that. So that we are not going back to rock the same base that it has been built and cemented over a lot of effort.
We'll get into more details on that issue later on. We have, this is our last topic of discussion. Very quickly, we have like 3 minutes only before we wind up. There's a story here on page 2 of the Daily Nation. Few women willing to join diplomatic service, says the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Monica Juma. She has lamented the reluctance by qualified women to take up diplomatic assignments for family reasons, quote unquote. She was speaking at some event in Mauritania, telling the audience how officers often struggle to convince women to take up foreign service jobs because of the inherent belief in society that they have to take care of homes and raise children. Dismas, very quickly, what is your take on this? And Monica Juma has been, I think she has been very active in trying to make sure women are brought through, especially in her ministry.
Well, Monica Juma is a female, and she's having a successful career in the foreign service. So whatever she's suggesting, unless there is empirical evidence, it's very easy to dismiss it. There are women, in fact, are denying. I doubt whether a lady, a career public servant who's been working for foreign affairs, if you get appointed as an ambassador or an high commissioner, you'll go back to President Kenyatta, then you say, sorry, sir, I have to take care of my husband and children. I'm not taking up this responsibility. No way. And in any event, I know for a fact that if you are a leader and you are appointed to this position, there's an opportunity for you to go with your family. You can convince your husband to retire, to resign, or to venture into business. Or if the husband says no, then you go with your children because you're given return tickets. So I doubt whether that reason that Monica Juma has given is sufficient to kill the aspirations of females wanting to join the foreign service.
Lillian, what do you think? Do you think this is a real challenge?
No. I'm having a hard time believing that that is actually the case. There's so many women out here, powerful, strong women who would take these jobs, and saying that because you have a family, you have that would buy you from taking on an important assignment such as this, and to put women out there doesn't make sense. If there are no women willing to do this, come to the diaspora. There's several women who could take this job in a heartbeat. Actually, many women who would do these jobs, yeah.
All right, let's leave it there we're out of time for what's happening in the newspapers this morning. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Sunday edition on KTN News. When we come back, we'll discuss that sugar report that was tabled on the floor of the House by that Joint Parliamentary Committee, a report that has been termed as shallow and inconclusive.